Chapter 36. The Dream of Vengeance. In the evening, her ladyship gave orders that Monsieur d'Artagnan should be admitted as usual, as soon as he should come, but he came not. On the next morning, Kitty went again to see D'Artagnan and told him all that had occurred on the previous day. D'Artagnan smiled. This jealous anger of her ladyship was his revenge. The patience of the indignant lady had increased by night. She renewed her orders relative to the young Gascon, but, as on the preceding evening, her hopes were in vain. On the next morning, Kitty visited D'Artagnan. She was, however, no longer joyous and alert, as on the previous days, but on the contrary, overcome with grief. D'Artagnan inquired of the poor girl what ailed her, but the latter, as her sole reply, drew from her pocket a letter which she handed to him. This letter was in her ladyship's handwriting, only on this occasion it was really meant for D'Artagnan and not for Monsieur de Wardes. He opened it and read it as follows. Dear Monsieur d'Artagnan, it is not wrong thus to neglect your friends, especially when about to part for so long a time. I and my brother looked for you in vain, both yesterday and the day before. Will it be the same this evening? Your very grateful Lady de Winter. This is all very plain, said D'Artagnan, and I expected this letter. My credit rises as that of the Count de Wardes falls. And will you go? Asked Kitty. Listen, my dear child, replied the Gascon, who sought to excuse himself in his own eyes for failing in his promise to Athos. You must see that it would be imprudent to refuse so imperative an invitation. Her ladyship, on seeing that I kept away, would wonder at the cessation of my visits, and might perhaps suspect something. And who can tell the limits of such a woman's vengeance? Oh, mon Dieu! Exclaimed Kitty. You know how to represent things in such a way that you're always right. But you will go and pay your court to her again, and if you should happen to please her now with your own face and under your true name, it will be far worse than before. The poor girl guessed, by instinct, something of what was about to occur. D'Artagnan comforted her as well as he was able, and promised her that he would remain insensible to her ladyship's seductions. He sent word by way of answer that he was as grateful as man could be for her ladyship's kindness, and that he would not fail to wait upon her as she commanded, but he did not venture to write to her, lest, to her experienced eyes, he should be unable to disguise his handwriting sufficiently. At 9 o'clock, D'Artagnan was at the Place Royale. It was obvious that the servants, who were waiting in the antechamber, had already received their orders, for as soon as he had appeared, before he had even inquired if her ladyship was to be seen, one of them hastened to announce him. "Show him in," said my lady, in a voice so piercing that he heard it in the antechamber. He was at once admitted. "Not at home to anybody," said her ladyship. "Do you hear? Not to anybody." D'Artagnan observed the lady with great curiosity. She was pale, and her eyes were heavy, either from weeping or from want of sleep. The customary lights in the room had been designedly diminished in number, and yet the young woman could not conceal the traces of the fever which had been consuming her for 2 days. D'Artagnan approached her with his usual gallantry, and she made a mighty effort to receive him, but never did a more agitated face contradict a more enchanting smile. To D'Artagnan's questions respecting her health, she replied, "Bad, very bad." "Then," said D'Artagnan, "I am indiscreet in coming. You are unquestionably in want of a little peace, and I will immediately retire." "No," said her ladyship, "remain, Monsieur d'Artagnan. Your pleasing company will, on the contrary, give me great relief." "She's never been so charming before," thought D'Artagnan. "Let me keep upon my guard." Her ladyship assumed the most affectionate air possible, and gave the utmost charm to her conversation. At the same time, that fever which had for a moment left her returned to restore the luster to her eyes, the roses to her cheeks, and the carmine to her lips. D'Artagnan again saw the Circe who had already encompassed him with her enchantments. Her ladyship smiled, and he felt that he would dare perdition for that smile. There was a moment during which he experienced something like remorse for what he had contrived against her. Her ladyship became, by degrees, more communicative. She asked D'Artagnan whether his heart was occupied by any love. "Alas," said he, assuming this most sentimental manner that he could, "how could you be so cruel as to ask me such a question? Me, who ever since I first saw you have only breathed and lived by you and for you." The lady smiled most strangely. "And so you love me?" said she. "Need I tell you so now, and have you never perceived it?" "Yes, I have, but you know the prouder hearts are, the more difficult they are to win." "Ah, no difficulties can ever daunt me," replied D'Artagnan. "My only fear is of impossibilities." "Nothing is impossible," said the lady, "to one who truly loves." "Nothing, madame?" "Nothing," she replied. "Faith," thought D'Artagnan, "the time is changed. Will the capricious creature chance to fall in love with me? And will she be disposed to give me another sapphire equal to that which she gave me for de Wardes?" "Come," resumed her ladyship, "let me hear what you would do to prove the love that you profess." "Everything that you can ask. Command, and I am ready to obey." "Everything?" "Yes, everything," exclaimed D'Artagnan, who knew beforehand that he did not risk much by such an engagement. "Well, then, let us talk a little about it," said she, drawing her chair nearer D'Artagnan. "I am all attention, madame," said the latter. The lady paused for a moment, thoughtful and undecided. Then, appearing to form her resolution, she said, "I have an enemy." "You, madame!" cried D'Artagnan, feigning surprise. "Mon Dieu, beautiful and good as you are, is it possible?" "A mortal enemy." "Indeed?" "An enemy who has so cruelly insulted me that there is a war to death between us. Can I reckon upon you as ally?" D'Artagnan instantly perceived at what the vindictive creature was aiming. "You can, madame," said he emphatically. "My arm and my life belong to you as well as my love." "Well, then," said her ladyship, "since you are as generous as you are enamored—" She hesitated. "Well?" demanded D'Artagnan. "Well," resumed her ladyship after a moment's silence, "cease from this day to speak of impossibilities." "Do not overwhelm me with my happiness!" exclaimed D'Artagnan, throwing himself on his knees and covering with kisses the hands which she abandoned to him. "Yes," thought the lady, "avenge me on that wretch de Wardes, and I shall easily get rid of you afterwards, double fool, living sword blade." "Yes," thought D'Artagnan also on his side, "tell me that you love me after having so audaciously deceived me, and then, dangerous and hypocritical woman, I will laugh at you in concert with him whom you wish to punish by my hand." Raising his hand, D'Artagnan said, "I am ready." "You understand me, then, dear D'Artagnan," said her ladyship. "I can read your every look." "Then you will, for me, employ that arm which has already gained such great renown?" "Yes, instantly." "And how," said her ladyship, "shall I ever repay a service so important?" "Your love is the only recompense that I desire, the only one that would be worthy either of you or me," replied D'Artagnan. "Infatuated creature," said she, smiling. "Ah!" exclaimed D'Artagnan, carried away for an instant by the passion which this woman had the power of exciting in his heart. "Ah, your love appears to me to be improbable, and fearful of seeing it vanish like a dream, I'm impatient to receive from your own lips the assurance of its reality." "Do you already merit such an avowal?" "I am at your command," replied D'Artagnan. "Are you quite determined?" said she with a lingering doubt. "Name the wretch who has drawn tears from your beautiful eyes." "And who has told you that there have been tears?" exclaimed she. "I imagine so." "Women of my character never weep," replied her ladyship. "So much the better, but tell me his name." "Remember that his name is all my secret." "Yet I must know it." "Yes, you must. See what confidence I place in you." "You overpower me with joy. What is his name?" "You know it." "Indeed?" "Yes." It is not one of my friends, said he, feigning hesitation as evidence of his ignorance. And if it were one of your friends, would you hesitate? Said her ladyship, with a threatening flash that was sparkling in her eyes. Not if it were my brother, exclaimed D'Artagnan, as though carried away by enthusiasm. Our Gascon advanced without danger, for he knew where he was going. I love your devotedness, said the lady. Alas, do you love only that in me? Said Monsieur d'Artagnan. I will tell you that another time, replied she, taking his hands. And this pressure made D'Artagnan tremble, as though the fever which her ladyship endured had also infected him. You will love me some day, you? Exclaimed he. Oh, if that should come to pass, the bliss will deprive me of reason. D'Artagnan was, in fact, intoxicated with joy, and in his temporary delirium he almost believed in the tenderness of her ladyship, and in the crime of de Wardes. If the latter had been at that moment near him, he would have slain him. The lady seized the opportunity. He is cold, she uttered in her turn. De Wardes, I know it, interrupted D'Artagnan. And how did you know it? Asked she, seizing his two hands and looking into his eyes, as if striving to read his very soul. D'Artagnan felt that he had allowed himself to be led into a fault. Tell me, then, tell me, she exclaimed. How do you know it? How do I know it? Repeated D'Artagnan. Yes, I know it because yesterday in a drawing-room where I was, de Wardes displayed a ring which he said you gave him. The wretch! Exclaimed her ladyship. It will easily be understood that this epithet resounded in the very depths of D'Artagnan's heart. Well, continued she. Well, I will avenge you on this wretch, said D'Artagnan, giving himself the airs of Don Japhet of Armenia. Thanks, my brave friend, exclaimed the lady. And when shall I be avenged? Tomorrow, immediately, whenever you command. Her ladyship was about to exclaim immediately, but she reflected that such precipitation would be but little complimentary to D'Artagnan. She had, moreover, 1,000 precautions to take, and 1,000 counsels to impress on her defender, that he should avoid all explanations with the Count in the presence of witnesses. Tomorrow, resumed D'Artagnan, you shall be revenged, or I shall no more exist. No, said she, you will revenge me, and I will not die. You will not die. I know something in reference to that. What do you know? Why, it seems to me in your former contest with him, you had no reason to complain of fortune. Fortune is a fickle jade. Today favorable, she may betray me tomorrow. Does it mean that you now hesitate? No, I do not hesitate. God forbid, but... Silence, she interrupted. I hear my brother. It is inexpedient that he should find you here. She rang the bell, and Kitty entered. Go through this door, said she to D'Artagnan as she opened a small secret door, and return at 11 o'clock when we can end this conversation. Kitty will conduct you to me. As the poor girl heard these few words, she felt as if she would sink into the earth. Well, what are you about, mademoiselle, that you stand there as motionless as a statue? Come, show me out. Remember, at 11 tonight. It appears that all your appointments are for 11 o'clock, thought D'Artagnan. It is a confirmed habit. The lady gave him her hand, which he kissed with tenderness. Well, thought he as he went away, scarcely replying to the reproaches of Kitty. Well, I must not make a fool of myself. Unquestionably, this woman is an abominable wretch. I must be on my guard.